I finished this film for a conference in Ankara just before the coup last night. But I think because of those events, the message in the film is even more important today, and I think this message therefore needs a wider audience. There are now nearly 300 men, women and children dead on the streets of Ankara and Istanbul because of the mindless thuggery, arrogance and stupidity of a section of the military. It doesn't matter what inspired them or who commanded them, it must be utterly condemned for any soldier who swears loyalty to his or her state, whether Turkey, Egypt, Syria or wherever, to then use his or her weapons against civilians in this way. The problem in Turkey may lie with the founding father Ataturk, who seized power in a coup against the sultans, and this has been used as a mandate for a series of coups throughout the last century. But Ataturk's action was nearly 100 years ago, and the world has changed, and I hope our standards have improved significantly. The soldiers who terrorized Istanbul and Ankara last night did so in the wake of another terrorist attack in Nice. Nothing justifies such slaughter, nothing justifies such terrorism. Reasoned debate, and not the gun, is the only way to provide answers. Baylar, bayanlar, benim adım Tim Wilson. Türkiye'nin üzerinde çalıştığı başkanlık sistemi hakkındaki düşüncelerimi paylaşmak istiyorum sizlerle. And now I'm going to continue in English. A president per se is neither a guarantee of stability nor of democracy. It is the quality of leadership that is important and the way the office is passed from one generation to another. Today, Turkey faces an historic opportunity, and I think, while on the one hand the plans for Mr. Erdogan's proposed presidential democracy are a departure from the past, they are also very much in line with the founding principles of Kemal Atatürk's Republic of Turkey. Some years ago we made a film about Darende, and we interviewed a man there who spoke of the building of a great road by Adnan Menderes that linked Darende and Malatya. For many years Turkey has been stuck in a one-party system or under military rule. Today that's not the case. Menderes may not have been the choice of the West, but he led the first attempt in Turkey at a multi-party democracy. His period of office was brief and troubled, leading to a military coup and his execution on September the 17th, 1961. Since 2002, the AK party has taken Turkey into greater democracy and prosperity, as well as respecting the Muslim identity of the majority. But it is also recognised that the paradigm imposed in 1922 is one that may have been appropriate to the West, or to the West's interests, and then the one which was revised in the 1980s was done by a military junta. That is not the case today. Turkey today has its own different identity and is entitled to its own understanding of democracy. The proposal is for a publicly elected president with greater powers, and at a time of serious disquiet across the EU and Russia, if this will promise greater stability in Turkey, that should be encouraged. It seems to me, as an observer, that a revision of a constitution put in place partly by a military dictatorship is long overdue. For one thing, the focus on the Evren constitution was the state and not the citizen. And another is the fact that today over 70% of that original constitution has been changed. It is no longer working, and the original document is no longer relevant to the transformed Turkey of today. But as someone in a country reeling from its first referendum in 25 years, I urge caution. It is quite clear that the referendum is a tool of democratic change, and like the UK, the population of Turkey today hovers on a knife edge with about 49% to 41% in favour of change. The positive aspect of a referendum is the vitality of debate it can encourage throughout the country, but I urge you to ensure that the debate is grounded on incontrovertible facts so that neither side can later claim they were deceived. I think there is much to praise in Prime Minister Yildirim's focus on increasing and cementing alliances rather than creating enemies. For example, we can think of the better relationship with Israel and with Greece, and I rather hope in the post-referendum period that we will be forging a much better relationship between the UK and Turkey. Dialogue rather than dictatorship, education rather than indoctrination, a visible and fully independent judicial system, the nurturing of human rights and greater opportunity. Turkey has a dynamic youth which is demanding a more coherent system and economic reform. Now let's deal with the problems of the presidential democracy, and the chief of these is the idea of dictatorship. Kemal Atatürk was often called a dictator, but the first president, Kemal Atatürk, was so bored by his lack of real engagement in running the country. He said he was bored to tears. In our country, he said, the president's only function is to sign documents. Well, the constitution that was drawn up in the 1920s was a nod to the French constitution, but check President Hollande, or even more so President Sarkozy, if you really think that the French president remains a figurehead only. And it seems to me, as an observer, curious that it is the nationalists in Turkey who most oppose the presidential system. In fact, I think I'm probably right in saying it's the people from the same party which were involved in drafting the 1961 Constitution. And that's a document which has been so revised and tinkered with year after year, it is simply not clear to me what these people are opposing. Change, certainly, and change is always frightening. On the one hand, a presidential system simply gives credibility to a presidential election. Why elect somebody who is expected to do practically nothing? If you want a figurehead, have a constitutional monarchy. On the other hand, if you go back to the establishment of the organizational law in 1921, Ataturk was really assuming that the army would hold effective power, which it no longer does. So moving to a fully democratic and secular system requires adjustment. A modern democracy needs checks and balances, and without the military as a central player, it seems to me that a more proactive president may well in time act as a balance to a strong parliament. We have to remember that Turkey is a country with a long history and a very proud Ottoman history. Turkey always knew in the past what to do, and it should now know and take responsibility for what it does in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, teşekkür ederim.